you know. So it's staying there, and I'm sleeping a lot and feeling tired a lot, you know. So I better.
Don't sleep with the television on.
Knock us off all of a sudden.
Y'all, I know we're a few minutes late getting started. We're waiting for just a couple of more folks to find us. They should be here momentarily, including members of the Jenkins family. So just give us a few more minutes and we'll get started. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
it's Councilman Mitchell. I'm on the line right now, but if you see me get off, just tell Jennifer, I'm under the weather a little bit, but I just wanted to be on here right now in the beginning.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being with us.
All righty.
And I think, believe it or not, as sparse as it looks up here, this meeting, we're allowed to attend virtually as well. So we actually have a quorum. I see council members Saccharin, Mitchell, Waring, and Shealy on the Hollywood squares up there, and there may be others. And council members Gregory and Parker and Appel. Wow. Okay.
And Seekings.
And Seekings. Sorry about that. I couldn't see everybody at one time. Now we're getting you up there. This is my first time out to the New Berkeley Electric Co-op building. It looks very nice, isn't it? They opened it, I guess, in the last few months, last year. You don't have yeah. Yeah. I meant to bring one in from the car, and I know y'all almost always have one available.
Yeah, we didn't. Weren't sure if we should.
Councilmember Shade is on the way here.
Yes, he got turned around.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought y'all would kind of start talking and partying a little bit since we were waiting a minute to get started. And it's so quiet, I feel like we ought to go ahead and start. I think Councilmember Shade is on the way, and we have a few members of the Jenkins family coming, but we can go ahead and get started with our presentation meeting and our presentation. And maybe when all the Jenkins family gets here, we can take a little break. And I just have a resolution to offer to them in honor of Abe Jenkins. So I'd like to call this February 8th meeting of the City Council of Charleston to order. And I ask Madam Clerk if you would please call the roll.
Councilmember Gregg. Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shade. Councilmember Bowden.
Here.
Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. If you would like to join us, Councilmember Brady will lead us in an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. Councilmember Brady.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to live in what we consider the greatest city in the world. We ask that you bless our decision-making, and may it be for the betterment of all citizens of the city of Charleston. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
indivisible.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we gave a prayer of some thanks. I would like to add my own thanks to those first responders, particularly our brave firefighters who responded to a really terrible fire yesterday morning, West Ashley at the Palms Apartments. And thankfully, I mean, God blessed us that no one was hurt or killed because it was a really big fire. 4 buildings were wiped out completely, and each building had 8 apartments, and then a few others were damaged. So as of this morning, there were something like 85 apartments that had been displaced, over 175 people. I just mentioned that because number one, we're thankful, but number two, we need to help those who were displaced by this fire. The Red Cross is leading the effort, but we're very connected with this effort, and I would challenge us as a community to help these individuals get resituated and be able to help them over, the next few months, not just a one-time thing, here's a check and see you later. So we've got different churches and community organizations that are stepping forward to help, in essence, step through or mentor these individuals and their families. And if you know of anybody or your church group would like to be involved, please contact us or the Red Cross. We have a coordination meeting tomorrow. And I talked to Chief Curia today, and this is a wonderful gesture of cooperation from the town of Mount Pleasant. They, along with our own city fire department, will have little drop-off stations at each of our fire stations in the city and in Mount Pleasant for non-perishable goods, clothing. I mean, I was there, y'all, yesterday morning, and literally they were knocking on the doors and pulling people out when the fire was getting going. They walked out with their pajamas on and everything got burned up. They got nothing left. So just basic stuff they're going to need. And, the Red Cross has like a little budget for a certain amount of money they give each family, but we really need to pull together and try to help them beyond what the Red Cross would normally do. They're great, don't get me wrong. So I wanted to also welcome to our meeting our newest council member representing District 1, Boyd Gregg, is with us. He was successful in a special election just a week before last. We went ahead and swore him in last Friday, so he's officially a city council member. We wanted to do that since this council meeting kind of got split up into two different meetings. And next, before we get to the main item on our agenda, which is the Johns Island Municipal Improvement District, I'd like to take a few minutes and pay tribute to our friend and to the family of Abe Jenkins, who sadly we lost a few weeks ago. And so the city has, and I want to recognize members of the Jenkins family are here. Abe's father, Bill Jenkins, thank you for being with us, and his sister Dement, and some cousins are here as well, and family members. And I can't imagine anybody on Johns Island didn't know Abe Jenkins. Whereas the city of Charleston wishes to recognize one of its most dedicated citizens, Abraham Bill Abe Jenkins Jr. And Abe was the oldest of 4 children, born to Abraham Bill Jenkins Sr. and Georgetta Johnson Jenkins in Cambridge, England. How about that, Councilmember Seekings? Also born in England.
I did not know that.
Yes, how about that? So whereas
right.
having
Place from.
traveled extensively due to his father's position in the U.S. Air Force, Abe attended schools abroad until his father received his final posting to Charleston, South Carolina, where the family settled permanently. Abe attended Somerville High School, where he received a football scholarship to attend Delaware State University in Dover, Delaware. He later transferred to South Carolina State University, a proud Bulldog. Abe's love for politics inspired him to pursue an undergraduate degree in political science from South Carolina State, which he completed in 1978. In 2004, he earned a Master's of Science degree in Dynamics of Organization and Leadership from the University of Pennsylvania. Abe is the father of 3 children, Renee, James, and Jamal. Later in his life, Abe moved with his family to Philadelphia, was hired as Director of Transport Services at the hospital, the University of Pennsylvania. He was the first African-American director at that hospital. He ultimately moved back to Charleston in 2004, where he met Wanda Days, who also attended Wesley United Methodist Church on Johns Island. The two married on March 28th of 2014. Abe worked tirelessly for both President Barack Obama's presidential campaigns and held several positions with those campaigns. He served ably for 2 years as political director of the South Carolina Democratic Party and recently served as state political director for Pete for America presidential campaign. Abe served as the secretary of the Sea Island Comprehensive Health Care Corporation Board of Directors and a member of the Board of Directors of Rural Missions, Inc., the Concerned Citizens of Sea Islands and Coastal Conservation League. He also led an effort to rejuvenate the Progressive Club, which was founded by his grandfather, Esau. And following in those footsteps of his paternal grandparents, Esau and Janie Jenkins, and really the entire Jenkins family, Abe was dedicated to fighting for justice for all. He was an activist, an organizer, a mentor, but most importantly, he was a loyal friend. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of all our citizens, extend to the members of Abe's family this expression of our sincere regret for your loss. And we don't only hope, we know that you will be consoled by the fond memories of Abe's life and its many accomplishments. God bless you. I'll come forward and present this to you. And if Dement or you, or Mr. Jenkins, would like to make any remarks, we'd be pleased to have them.
I just want to thank all the people here on the state of South Carolina and Charleston County. Abe and I had a long, long vacation. He was born in England. And from England, we went to many places. Vienna, back here, and he was part of the President Obama's campaign. And he did a good job there, got to be president. And he came back and he started working with all the local people. And he was a real good member of my church. And I want to thank all of you. Thank you. God bless you.
My father has said it very nicely. We are very proud of Abe and Abe's accomplishments. He was my big brother. He was my friend, my confidant, and we just really appreciate the love and the tributes that have been given to Abe and about Abe. It has made myself, my brother, my sister, and his 3 children, and all of our cousins and aunts and uncles very, very proud of the work that he has done. And we will continue to live his legacy and follow in his footsteps. God bless you all. Sorry to hold up the meeting, sorry.
Thank you again for being with us. So for the main part of our meeting here today is to discuss and to hear from property owners about a proposed municipal improvement district for Johns Island. There are three purposes behind the formation of this district. And that is to be able to have funds for the city to include road construction and transportation infrastructure on the island, to be able to create additional parks and recreation improvements for our citizens, including land acquisition and construction, and thirdly, to assist with drainage infrastructure solutions, including easements. So we have a presentation by staff that will kind of review this whole matter from the very start, give everyone the background, and then we're going to welcome to hear from our citizens here any comments you may have, and council will be able to ask questions. The way I understand it, we're not going to be taking any actions tonight. We're here to share with you everything we know about this and answer questions and hear your comments and suggestions and any objections you may have as well. This is Robert Summerfield. He's the Director of Planning for the City of Charleston. Robert?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. So I just want to do a real quick recap on what the Johns Island Municipal Improvement District is, talk a little bit about what this evening's purpose is, kind of recap what you just said. Also online is Jeremy Cook, who is the attorney that's been advising this process, who will also give us some instructions, if you would, on how to do the public hearing of objections. This is new for us. This is, we think, one of the only mids that have been done in South Carolina that's not a part of like Nexton or Magnolia or something like that, where it's a single owner. This is somewhat unique in South Carolina's experience. So real quick, just a reminder, we're required to hear the objections. This is per the statute. This council has already established the municipal improvement district. It did that by ordinance. It submitted a resolution that provided for the improvement plan. Mayor, you just summed up what that improvement plan essentially details. It details how the mid proceeds would be spent. They'll be spent on transportation related projects, park recreation facilities and infrastructure related to that, as well as contributing to drainage or stormwater projects. Again, this is not a substantial sum of money in the big picture for infrastructure projects. It's really meant to supplement other funding sources that are already either earmarked, dedicated, or we would expect to become dedicated to these types of projects in the future. So it's essentially, you can think of it as gap funding. It's the smaller projects may be paid for out of the mid, but in general, most of these projects that are contemplated, this would help get them across the finish line so that they could get done hopefully sooner than potentially currently programmed for. Again, the South Carolina Municipal Improvement Act was adopted in 1999. This provides for a special fee to be assessed to property owners in addition to normal taxes or other fees that may be assessed to the property. The funds generated for a mid may only be spent in that mid area. It doesn't mean that they are exclusively on property adjacent to or right of way or other infrastructure immediately adjacent to the property, but they must be proximate and they must benefit those properties that are participating. The written consent is required for any existing property owner that is living on the property. So to be very clear, the mid does not include anyone as of the creation of the mid that was a 4% owner occupied home. So, or property rather. So this would only be for those properties that are non-owner occupied or non-4% would be included in the district. It does create a dedicated funding stream for these infrastructure improvements on Johns Island. Only applicable new, and this is another key distinction, only new commercial space or residential construction would be a part of the assessment. So we would only be assessing on properties where we have a new residential unit or additional or new construction for commercial. Let's see, mid funds, again, will only be spent on Johns Island infrastructure as it relates to those three categories that we previously mentioned. The map that's up now shows in purple, or not purple, I'm sorry, orangish gold color. Those are the properties that the mid adopted is included in the district. So those are the properties that are a part of this assessment district. It is important to note that obviously the area of Johns Island is much bigger than the mid, but these are only city properties that meet the criteria that have been included in the district. Zooming in a little bit, this gives you just a closer snapshot of these properties. As you can see, there's still quite a few properties that do not meet the test and therefore are not contributing to the mid district. Again, current owner occupied were not included in the district, so they're not a part of this. Properties, so there's two tests for parcels that are in the district. A property is 2 acres or greater and the property is located in the city and the property is not currently being used as a primary residence. And then second test is the property has an active entitlement for development, meaning it's gone through some kind of TRC or planning commission or what have you, but does not yet have a certificate of construction completion, meaning it's not occupiable at this point. The assessment, so very key. The billing only begins after a parcel that's in the district builds a new commercial space or a residential structure, and the billing is triggered when a certificate of construction completion has been issued by the city. So once the building official has zeroed out all inspections and issued that certificate of construction completion, meaning the project is ready to be occupied and generate income if it's commercial, or be moved into, then it would see the assessment. The fee for a residential unit is $480 per year. That does increase annually over the 30-year period that the mid is established for. For commercial buildings, a residential equivalency was created. So every 1,800 square feet of new commercial space would be at the $480 per year on that again, and that would increase 2% annually for 30 years. Non-assessed property. So by the ordinance, we provided some components in there about non-assessed property. That would include any public property, any owner association property, or any utility property. Additionally, no assessment will be imposed on these properties. And I cannot remember, do we have the thing about affordable housing? Okay, so and then the other piece I want to talk about here in the non-assessed is we also, in the documentation, it's very clear that there is a credit given for any affordable residential unit. So if you have a bona fide affordable residential unit, meaning it's met the test required from our Department of Community and Housing or Housing and Community Development, then that unit is credited against whatever assessment might be provided. So if you have one unit that you've added and that unit is affordable, that unit will not be, for the life of its affordability, it would not be charged the assessment. It's important for people to realize that. So this really quickly just gives the history. We've been at this work for quite a while, actually. The department began these discussions about a mid back in 2018, spring, summer of 2018. Has been working with the public and some stakeholder engagement since the fall of 2019. That continued all the way through this past summer when we began preparing for the public process at City Council, which included the City Council meeting of July 20th, where the City Council resolution to begin drafting the Municipal Improvement District ordinance was held and approved by council. On August 17th, we held a public hearing where folks could come out. We held that, I believe that was an offsite meeting, actually. We held that so that we could try to get as much participation in that one as possible. That was, again, we held that public hearing. We had a few people come out. Generally speaking, the speakers came out in favor of the mid concept. We did have a speaker who was concerned about whether or not we had reached out to some of the underrepresented groups that have not traditionally attended public meetings. We did follow up after that and held some additional community outreach sessions to try to garner additional comments from those underrepresented groups. On October 12th of last year, the City Council did establish the mid by passing a city ordinance on its third reading. Again, just like all other ordinances, the bill did get an introduction and then a second and third reading. In December of this past year, we sent out notices to all property owner by registered certified mail, so that again, every property owner that was established in the district was notified by certified mail that they were a part of the district, and establishing when the date and location for this hearing today is. Today, February 8th, we're holding the required public hearing of objections. That objection hearing is for council to hear anyone's objection to being assessed. And that will help us complete this process so that in the next month or so, we can complete the assessment roll, so that if any properties do trigger the certificate of construction completion between now and when we have to submit documentation to the county for next year's tax bill, we're able to do that. All right, some other FAQs. So how much money will the mid generate? Essentially over a 30-year period, based on the number of properties that have been included in current anticipated development patterns, we expect about $60 million to be generated through this mid program in that 30-year period. How long will it take? Again, there's no way to tell for certain how long it will take. We expect that there will be a little money that will be generated in the early years, but as additional construction projects that are either currently entitled or even some that are preliminarily under construction come online, we do expect that to come forward. Additionally, as those revenues begin to materialize, it will allow us to have that conversation with the CFO about whether or not we have the ability to bond and bring in money that we can then get those infrastructure projects rolling sooner rather than later to deliver those for the community here on Johns Island. And what projects will be funding and how they will be prioritized. So the specific projects that will be funded will be done as money is available. So again, we don't know yet when specific dollars will be available. So to say that it will be for this project or that project, again, because it's intended to be gap funding, that's exceedingly difficult for us to do. But what is committed by the mayor's office and Councilman Brady, who is the district representative, is that entire work will be done in a public forum. There will be a citizens advisory committee established to help prioritize those projects as we have revenue available, so that we're spending it where the need is most appropriate. Again, limited in that geography, limited in that purpose for the Johns Island mid area. And at this point, I believe I'm turning it over to Jeremy Cook, who I believe is on Zoom, to kind of provide some additional language about the interpretations that we will present at a subsequent city council meeting.
Okay, can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah, so the documents that Robert has been alluding to provide for certain interpretations over time by city council. Obviously, they're very in-depth documents. They're going to have a long life of 30 years. As part of city council's ongoing work will be to annually review and approve an assessment roll. So that will go back to, as Robert was talking about, properties that triggered it through the construction of a new house or new commercial building. So every year council will be asked to approve an assessment roll for the assessments that will be billed that year. Typically this would happen end of the summer, the very beginning of the fall. so that they could be included on the tax bills that get sent in October and November. The second part of City Council's ongoing role after the creation of the MID is to provide interpretations of the documents. So this is not something that's going to be done tonight, as if also there's not going to be decisions tonight, but there are two initial interpretations that have come out from discussions that staff has had with interested stakeholders. The statute speaks to the date of the creation of the Johns Island MID, and that could either be the date when the ordinance was adopted or tonight. Staff recommendation is that that be treated as tonight. The second interpretation has to do with if an existing house or business is destroyed, for example, by fire. So if somebody has a house on Johns Island tonight, their property is in the assessment district, and unfortunately, like what the mayor was speaking of, there's a fire 2 years from now, and that homeowner decides to rebuild. Even though that property is in the assessment district, it would not be subject to an assessment because it's not a new house or a new construction for purposes of the MID. It's a replacement. So that will be two interpretations that will be coming to City Council at a subsequent meeting, but wanted to flag those issues tonight in connection with the hearing on objections. Robert, do you want me to go on to the hearing part now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so tonight's is a hearing. This isn't the type of hearing City Council has done before. It's a statutory required hearing of objections from folks who have received the assessment notices. No decisions will even be made tonight. City Council certainly has the ability to ask specific questions about particular objections if you so desire, but certainly that's not required. And all decisions will be made at a subsequent meeting of City Council. During the objections, we would ask that folks identify themselves by name, address, and also the TMS number of the property about which they are objecting, so that we can have a full and complete record for City Council's consideration when decisions are made.
All right. So we have a list of folks that signed up.
Mr.
And,
Mayor, I believe Councilman Seekings is.
Oh, Councilmember
raised his
Seekings, do you
hand.
have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of really quick questions based on the presentation we just had on the procedure. Does the fact that a property owner objects tonight automatically place that property on an agenda for us to consider their objections and consider whether they should be included in the MID?
Yes. So at a subsequent meeting, if someone has completed the process of objecting, the council will need to by vote act on either upholding that objection or rejecting that objection at a subsequent meeting. Jeremy, I said that right?
By quick follow-up, it seems a little backwards that we've already created the MID and then we have the objection period, but I get that's the statutory scheme. Do we as a council through this objection process have the option other than by motion? Is there something in the statute from the state to reconsider our vote on whether or not the MID should be created?
I will let Jeremy field that one.
Yeah, so Councilman Seekings, tonight's meeting and the votes that would come are only on the specific objections that have been raised. So the statute does not address the question that you've raised. So if council wanted to take an action contrary to a prior ordinance, a new ordinance would need to be adopted, but the statute does not speak to that particular point.
But we will, in fact, based on the objections tonight, take up each individual objection at a subsequent meeting. Will that go through a committee or will that come to the council as a whole?
The statute requires the council to take action as a whole.
Wow. Okay, we need to talk to our state legislators about this. Seems a little bit backwards, but anyway, thank you.
We did try to investigate the committee process as we were trying to figure this out, because again, this is somewhat new. We're not aware of anyone else has had to do this. And the statute's clear that the action has to be taken by the council as a whole.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great. So, and if I may just add a comment, because sometimes I like to, in my own mind, simplify things. This whole initiative and idea came out of a series of meetings that we had on Johns Island. And a lot of citizens participated, where it was duly pointed out and acknowledged and recognized that Johns Island developed out without a lot of necessary infrastructure being put in place. And so the city is acknowledging that. And as you've heard the term before, an impact fee, this is different legally than an impact fee, but in my mind, it's very similar, where new development, not existing development, but new development would pay an extra fee in order so we can build that road connector we need, or build a gymnasium and a swimming pool, or help with a drainage project and the things that we think our citizens would like to have out here. So that's kind of the background of where all this came from. So we had a sign up list. Madam Clerk will call us out one at a time. I will once again repeat though, if you are a homeowner in a 4% registered single family home, you're not going to be assessed. So if you come up to object and you're already living here, I guess you would just be objecting against the whole idea of this thing, but it wouldn't be on your property. So also for future use, if we did affordable housing, it would not apply to those properties as well. So I wanted to make that clear.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I know you're explaining, but I'd like to have a question of Mr. Cook before we get to the public portion, if possible.
Absolutely. And we were just getting ready to go. So shoot, go ahead.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cook, 2 questions. If I own a piece of rental property that's not in the district now, okay, and use your example or the mayor's example, and it burned down, and I built it back, would it then be subject to the mid tax?
So Councilman Waring, your question is predicated that piece of property is not in the mid as approved by City Council? That's
right. So I have a rental property, and let's say I rent it out to Section 8. It burned, and right now it's not, I don't live there, but it's certainly used for affordable housing. It burns to the ground. So then I go and I build a brand new property and I lease it out again. It's affordable. If I have it on the Section 8 program, will it be subject to the mid tax?
So to answer your question, if I understand it correctly, it's no on 2 points. I mean, one, you're not in the improvement district.
Right.
So if you rebuild, you're not triggering anything in the improvement district because you're not in it. So the answer is no on that front. But if you want to say, well, if it were in the improvement district and you rebuilt with another affordable unit, no, it would not be assessed in that case either.
Okay. And as we go forward, because as I understand it, one council can't bind the next council. So 2 years from now, we have a new council members. This mid is for 30 years. Can the ordinance subject to be recalled? And if a majority of council voted not to have this mid, it'd be scuttled, or are we stuck for 30 years as a city?
I mean, so any action taken by an ordinance, a subsequent council could undo by ordinance.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Seekings.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, and I definitely want to hear from the public, but I have one more question. By virtue of the objection, and it comes back to City Council, we undertake it, is there a statutory set of objective criteria against which we weigh the objection? Or can someone just come up tonight and say, I object, I don't want to be in the mid, I don't want to pay this money, and then it comes to us to consider? Or are we going to get a list of objective criteria that we can determine whether or not someone has met those criteria?
The statute does not provide such an objective set, Councilman Seekings, as I'm guessing you're probably not surprised.
That's mind-numbing.
Right. So I mean, so this process is really on the not on the creation of the district, but on the actual assessments. So typically, the fact that folks would be expressing concerns about misapplication of the tests that have already been approved by city council, for example. So when Robert showed the two different tests, for example, say, I don't qualify under either test would be the type of objections, but it's certainly not, the notice of the objections isn't limited to that kind of specificity. So it could be an objection to inclusion.
So literally, someone can just say, I just don't want to be included, and we'll have to take that up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Councilmember Bowden?
Sorry.
Oh, he did? That was a short question as well. Any other council members before we start? And so when you come forward, please give us your name and address. If you have your TMS number, that would be great. Could we try to keep it to 2 minutes per objection, and understanding that city council is allowed to ask you a question as well. All right.
First is Reese Kimsey.
Good evening, Mayor Tecklenburg, City Council members. My name is Reese Kimsey, and I'm objecting on behalf of two property owners. TMS numbers, one of the owners is Miss Linda Yeomans. Her property TMS number is 279-00-00055, 279-00-00056. Both of those are at 3492-3486 Maybank Highway. I'm also objecting on behalf of Sean Smith, and his TMS number is 279-00-000-057. Objecting on both of those. Details of these objections were provided by letter for Jennifer Cook, so I just wanted to enter the record and make sure that they are objective on time. That's
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? All right. Oh, yeah.
Can you describe the nature of these properties now? What are they?
There's a number of issues that are detailed in the letter. I can comment on some. I mean, the main overriding one is a violation of the South Carolina Enabling Act. And more details are provided in the letters.
What can you describe the property for us now?
They're vacant land. It's 3 tracts of vacant land.
And what's the total acreage?
It's 40 acres, about 30 acres uplands.
And that would encompass all the TMS numbers we just mentioned?
Yes, sir.
What is it slated for development anytime soon?
It's slated for, it's in TRC approval right now for 210 units.
I'm sorry, slated for development when?
It's in TRC review, I think expected for TRC approval in June, into May, around right now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Neil Crutzen.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Neil Knutson. Our property is at 14.
Please try to speak a little more in the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Neil Knutson. My wife and property is at 1442 McPherson Landing. The TMS number is 311-00-0141. I object to this for the reason the infrastructure is already there. Rushland Island is a known development. Back in 2005, it had 125 home sites. There's 56 property owners out there with vacant lots that's going to be subject to this tax. It's a burden for every homeowner that's out there that should not be, because the infrastructure is there. It's known. The city accepted that when it annexed that property into it, and now it's throwing it into the special district. I object to it. And I think all 56 people out there in Councilman Brady's district would object to it also.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I have a question here.
Oh, yes, sir.
So you said there are 56 owners of the full property?
There's 56 vacant lots. Yes, sir.
56 vacant lots. And are there 56 distinct owners or the one owner?
They're one owner lots. Yes, sir. They cannot be subdivided. The sewer system's already been in place. The sewer taps are in place. The electricity taps, everything's there. My wife and I are just about ready for, I think the permit's been approved by the city. We haven't paid for it yet. It's went through the planning, but this is a real problem for homeowners that out. I mean, we're being taxed to death, and then turn around and have this on top of it instead of spread across the city. It's being thrown the shoulder on the burden of just a few. and it should not be.
So what are the average size of each lot?
Less than an acre. Mine's an acre and a tenth, but most of them are less than half to 3/4 of an acre.
If I may ask a question, you say existing homeowners, but nobody has built their homes yet?
Nobody's built their homes yet. We're paying 6% tax on that piece of property right now.
I see. I understand now. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Donna Knutson. Jennifer Ivy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here on behalf of two clients, Crown at Live Oak Square LLC. They're the owners of two
Ma'am,
parcels.
if you could speak into the mic a little closer, thank you.
Okay, apologize. Crown at Live Oak Square LLC is the owner of two parcels situated off Maybank Highway known as Crown at Live Oak Square Apartments. Their physical address is 1314 Riva Ridge Way. I also am here on behalf of Crown Maybank Holdings Limited Partnership. They're the owner of 6 commercial parcels that front Maybank Highway in front of those apartment complexes. The 2 apartment complexes are fully developed at this time. The 6 commercial mixed-use properties are partially developed. They total about 30 acres. We have submitted a formal objection to Ms. Cook's office. We would hope that council would please review that detailed objection, but we do want to raise a couple of points while we're here tonight. And the first is that the improvement plan that is before council details how the $60 million will be spent, but not what specific projects it will be spent on or where those projects are located. We saw the mid-map. We heard from Mr. Summerfield that this is a distinct mid from other mids that have been established in this state. And the problem is that we're not looking at a bullseye, the center of this mid map being the improvements and the properties to fund it being around that bullseye. And this is a real problem. It draws into question the legality of this ordinance and the enforceability overall. The other piece that we want to raise is that the new developments that are going to pay for this improvement will benefit the same as the general public. And this is not fair or equitable to impose this assessment just on future commercial developments. One point I do want to raise as well is that the way that the method that was chosen for this assessment makes no distinction for the number of bedrooms or size of the residential dwelling. And this is going to discourage building long-term and not take into account affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Don't
Any
go too
questions?
far.
Ma'am, one minute, please. Councilmember Shade.
You mentioned other municipalities have adopted these mids. What did you compare, or what other municipalities did you compare with on your question about this core development of core spending?
Yes, sir. The one that we particularly looked at is the Patriots Point mid. This was about 12 years ago. And when Patriots Point Boulevard was developed further, what the town of Mount Pleasant did in that instance was specially assess those property owners who had frontage along the road development. And there you could make the required analysis that the adjoining property owners were going to receive some special benefit.
All right. Thank you very much.
Andrea Haynes.
Please. Oh, do you want to come forward? And
Hi, I'm Andrea Haynes. I am with Crown Maybank Holdings Limited Partnership and Crown at Live Oak Square LLC. Jennifer Ivy represents me. Thank you all for considering our objections.
thank you.
Dwayne LaRoche.
Good evening, Mayor Tecklenburg, Charleston City Council. Fortunately, my property on Exchange Landing Road is not in the mid assessment, property adjacent to plow ground and River Road is in the assessment. Like I said, though my property is not in the assessment, I feel that surrounding areas close to my property, when will it stop? The property at Plow Ground Exchange Landing Road is an assessment, and when will it reach on the opposite side of River Road, coming on Exchange Landing Road or River Road towards the Johns Island Airport? And obviously, I'm not in objection to it, but I just want to know what will be the limitations. When will it stop, or will this be a more, as we used to say decades ago, the Riley Reach? So that's all I like to say, Mayor.
Understood. This isn't really intended as a question and answer session, but we have your name and number, and I bet staff or Mr. Cook will be able to follow up with a question unless they just happen to know it right now and want to respond. But I don't think so. I know the length of the thing is 30 years, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we set these TMS numbers. It's not going to expand, is it? We won't be adding TMS numbers.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Geographic boundaries as
But
established.
Robert, we need you to speak into the
Yeah.
mic.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, so the geographic boundaries are set. They cannot change unless another new ordinance in this entire process were to be done again to include new TSM numbers. So those geographies are set. Now, again, if a property subdivides, those new TSM numbers that are within that geographic boundary, those would be in the mid, but that's not an expansion. That's just a subdivision of existing property that's in the mid. So it would not, at this point, it would not move outside of those shaded areas from the previous map unless it came through council and did this whole thing over again to add those additional TSM numbers.
Great. No Riley Reach.
Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg.
Thank you.
Kim Bryant.
Thank you.
How you doing? My name's Kim Bryant. I've got actually 3 parcels here. The first one, the TMS number is 3110000142. It's located in Rushland. It also ties in with Mr. Knutson, his explanation that he had. I'd like to stop there before I go into the other 2, because you made a comment early that Johns Island, I'm born and raised here on Johns Island. I've watched it grow. You said Johns Island being developed without the infrastructure. Why did you let that happen? You know, you're approving these permits to be built for all these subdivisions on this island. The roads, you're choked to death. You can't get on and off the roads during prime traffic time. Even late at night now, it's dangerous to getting on and off some of the roads. We go back and look at the accidents that's happening on Johns Island. So you're taxing and you're penalizing people that have a plan to build, but not everybody on the island. But everybody's going to benefit from what you plan to use this mid money for. Okay? So I object to this. I have stronger words to use for it, but I won't use them at this time. My other tax numbers that I have is 313000051 and 242. They're located on Marlin Road on Johns Island here. It's known as Trophy Lakes. It's a total of 60 acres. I have no plans to develop it. It's been a park for the island. It's brought a lot of fun to the island, so I object to it for those reasons too. Again, you're penalizing a select few that select few is going to pay for it, but yet the whole island is going to benefit from your mid-construction and proposed infrastructure you plan on building. But you're not penalizing, or you're not restricting the permits to be where other new developments are built on the island.
Thank you, sir. I understand your objection.
And I'm not the only one that feels this way.
Understood. Any questions from council? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
James Bernstein.
Thank you, sir.
John Zlogar.
Good evening.
Evening. John Zlogar with the Johns Island Task Force. I just wanted to say that we really appreciate all the efforts that staff went through in terms of engaging the community. There was a lot of meetings, a lot of feedback, and the overwhelming feedback from Johns Islanders was they were behind this. We hope you really think really hard about any exceptions, especially for large developments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Leroy Blake. Leroy Blake. M. Howard.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And actually, Jennifer Ivy signed up twice.
Yes, Ms. Cook, I signed up a second time. We also have a second client, Beach Fenwick. They have Alan McMahon, who's here and would like to speak in my stead.
Good evening. And Ms. Cook, just to clarify, I also signed up on my to speak over the phone, but I was able to make it in person. So you could scratch my name from that.
And your name and address, please,
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir. Alan McMahon with the Beach Company, 320 Broad Street, Charleston, South Carolina, 29401. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. While we support, and I'm here on behalf of Beach Fenwick LLC, let me clarify, which owns about 19 acres along Maybank Highway. While we support community improvements and have a long history of doing so, improving communities where we work and we live, we believe that the structure of this MID has inherent flaws and is inequitable in its application. Excuse me. While a fee of $480 per residential unit or household may seem light to some folks, please consider that for a project like ours of 240 mostly studio and one bedroom single occupant units, that math comes to about $115,200 a year. So you're getting into a six-figure impact to us, and it increases 2% each year during the 30-year billing life of the MID. Taking that math a little bit further, that represents approximately a $3 million reduction in value at the outset, without even taking into account those annual escalations. Aside from diminishing the value of the project, that reduction can have significant consequences with respect to lender requirements and loan requirements. Further, because of the way this MID and the associated improvement plan is structured, it is not clear what improvements are contemplated or when and where they will take place. Due to a lack of specificity, it also isn't apparent whether folks paying these fees are the ones actually benefiting from these hypothetical improvements. To that end, given the scattered nature of the MID itself and the fact that there are numerous parcels within the MID that are not included in the MID, it is unclear how any finding could be made that the improvements provide a special benefit to any specific parcel within the MID as opposed to benefiting Johns Island generally. This seems to be even more the case when the improvements themselves are unknown. Respectfully, we don't understand how any benefit analysis can be completed with respect to any improvement or potential improvement when neither the location or the nature of the improvement to be analyzed is known. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight, this evening, and we'll again reiterate that we're always glad to work with you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and staff on public improvements, but we do not, however, believe that this proposed MID is the proper approach.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
for your time.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. McMahon, you
Yes.
can't get away from me that quickly.
Yes,
Your
sir.
mother wants to know why you haven't been over to her house for dinner more often. First
What's
question.
that?
Your mother wants to know why you haven't been over to her house for dinner more often.
I was actually there last night.
Okay.
Councilman Shaver.
But on a serious note, the number that you just gave us on the impact, you went through this a little quickly. What was the number that you cited for us as to the overall impact over the 30-year period?
Yeah,
What did-
sorry, and I was trying to look at my notes on my phone, but as I understand it, the proposed amount is $480 per residential unit. Our project is mostly single occupant studio and one bedroom units, but still $480. But if you, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you then multiply that by 240 units, the impact to us is, and possibly to our residents, is $115,000 a year. If you take that math further in terms of a valuation, that's a $3 million loss in value to one property.
That $3 million loss in value is not to just that unit. That's what I'm trying to, for you to clarify. The $3 million loss in value is as to the whole project.
To the whole project.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Thanks. Thanks, Alan. Thank you.
You want to say hello?
I will.
His mother and I are first got.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
William Marshall Moore. William Marshall Moore. All right, we will move on to our online speakers. And I believe we had some speakers who signed up that actually meant to sign up for tomorrow night, but we'll go through the list. Ashley Smith. Erica Sampson. Katie King. Megan Grassmick. And then we also received some comments. We received a letter from the beach company that stated while they appreciated the goal of improving the infrastructure on Johns Island, they must respectfully object to the current construct of the Johns Island Mid and its associated improvement plan. We received a letter from Walker, Gressett, Freeman, and Litton LLC that addresses, the firm represents Beach Fenwick LLC. They addressed 5 concerns. Special assessment and location should first be defined. Improvements must be funded through a general tax, not a special assessment. The selected method of assessment is not fair or equitable. Fenwick should not be included in the assessment roll and should not have received a notice of assessment because its project is not complete. The assessment roll has not been made available for inspection at the office of the CFO. No assessments of properties were stated when published in the newspaper, which does not comply with the requirements of the Enabling Act. We received a letter from Walker, Gressett, Freeman, and Linton. They also represent Crown Maybank Holdings and Crown at Live Oak Square. They addressed the following concerns. There were no provisions in the ordinance that protected and exempted developed properties from the future imposition of an assessment in the event of casualty or redevelopment. The improvement plan did not define properties in the mid that were going to be acquired and improved. The as yet to be determined improvements outside of the mid was a fatal deficiency in the ordinance. The assessment violated South Carolina Code 5-37-80 because the rates of assessments upon property owners within the mid varied in ways that were not proportional to the improvements made immediately adjacent to or abutting upon the property address. We received a letter of opposition from Landing Rushland, which was annexed into the city of Charleston in 2004. They said when there were 125 home sites for slated use, the owners believed Rushland did not fall into the category set out by Ordinance 2021-142. We received a letter from Middleburg Communities on behalf of Forest Maybank objecting to inclusion in the assessment roll for the mid ordinance. We also received a letter from St. John Center LLC objecting to their properties being included in the assessment roll for the mid ordinance. And those were all the comments and letters we received.
All right. And did we just happen to miss anybody? Did anybody come here to object that has not been heard? All right, thank you. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Council members, do you have any questions or comments you would like to make at this time? Councilmember Shade.
So Robert, maybe you or Jeremy can follow up on this. But I think early on you said that the test on this is if you're residential use and more than 2 acres, so those are 2 criteria, correct?
Jennifer, can I have the slides back by chance?
Sure. And actually I think IT has that. They can pull that up for you.
So there are two tests, Councilman. One, let's see if I can get it back here. So one is if you are 2 acres, your property is located in the city and your property is not currently used as a primary residence. The second test, though, is that you have active entitlements for development, meaning your project has been approved by Planning Commission or TRC. So if you, but you have not completed that project, meaning you've not received a certificate of construction completion. So those are the two options in there. So one is looking forward where we don't know if they're ever going to subdivide, but there's a good chance given their size, given the nature of the high ground that may exist on the site or what have you. The other one is where we know we have projects that are currently entitled, but they have not been completed yet.
And I just want to go through a litany and just correct me if I'm wrong with this. So if I own a 10-acre parcel of land and it's just sitting there as dirt and I'm not using it, that would not apply. I'm exempt from this assessment.
No, sir, you would meet the first test. So that property is being taxed at 6% because it's just dirt. There's no owner occupied residential unit on it. It's greater than 2 acres. And if, again, assuming in that scenario that you are in the city of Charleston, your property would be in the assessment. But again, you never will see an assessment on your tax bill until such point as you subdivide that property. Now, if you take that 10 acres and you create 5 2-acre lots, then each of those 5 2-acre lots, when they build their home, will see the $480 compounded at 2% for the 30-year period. But until that trigger, until that house is built and you can move into it, that assessment will never be seen by the property owner, whether it's the existing property owner or the future property owner.
Which I think is a very important distinction. And I just want to make sure I was clear on that. So while you may be eligible, you are not going to be impacted unless you start to develop it. That's
correct.
That's a short answer to that issue.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right. So you can.
Second part.
I'm sorry, Councilman. So you can be in the assessment district and never be billed $1.
Correct.
And so that would, if I'm a not-for-profit entity that owns land, I'm going to fall into that category of I may be eligible, but I'm not going to be assessed.
Correct. But again, we do have the component about the non-assessed property. So if you meet the non-assessed definition, you're also not going to be assessed as well. So even if you do something and you're one of these non-assessed properties, meaning you're a public property, you're an owner association property, or you're a utility or what have you, you wouldn't be assessed. But if you're a church, for instance, you would not be assessed unless you decide to redevelop that property and create new housing or something on it as some kind of future development of the site.
And I just think that's really important. There's really a lot more exceptions to this as you go through the exercise that you and I just went through, as to some of these properties that just never, or potentially never, are going to fall into this assessment tax.
Would never actually end up paying the fee. Correct.
And likewise, I would ask if you owned anything more than 2 acres and you never developed it, you just kept it as green space, so to speak, it would never get the assessment, correct?
That is correct.
No. All right.
So if it's never developed, it never pays the fee.
Great.
But right now it looks like it has the potential to maybe be developed. Again, you never know what your heirs are going to do when you pass to your reward. So,
right.
That would be the thing.
Councilmember Bowden.
Okay. So now that these objections have been heard, is there going to be some staff work on the individual properties to sort of, I don't know, if y'all are planning on making a recommendation as to what we should do, or what sort of impact it will have towards that $60 million, that sort of thing.
So what we will do is we will take all those TMSM numbers or addresses that were received tonight. We will be working with the legal team, both internal and Mr. Cook, to draft a memo that basically provides additional facts that staff has related to that objection. That will all then be distributed to council for part of your deliberations when you make your finding on whether to uphold the objection or to reject the objection.
Do we have by the ordinance or by state law any prescribed time frame? Or, I mean, I don't think it'll take you a long time, but I'm just wondering, are we under a clock?
Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the statute just says reasonable. So whatever is reasonable. Staff had initially been hoping to be able to have something for the 22nd, maybe, but we weren't going to commit to that until after the hearing and we knew how many objections we had and what kind of research and additional work we need to do.
It won't be a long time.
The next meeting or the one after that, I would anticipate.
I see. Okay, great. Councilmember Seekings, I can't see you, but I'm told you have a question.
Before Mr. Seekings, Councilman Seekings.
Councilmember Gregory?
Yes, and what will be the criteria that you will be using, legal and otherwise, to make the determination as to whether or not we accept or reject the objection for participating?
So I will leave it to Jeremy or Julia to talk about a legal reason. From a staff perspective, we will take a look at each objection and see if we made any errors in compiling the property as a member of the district. And if we did make an error, we'll signify that and give that to you for your then consideration to uphold the objection. But in the absence of an error, I don't believe this MID, as we've established it, meets the criteria by which we were asked to move it forward. So I don't know from a staff perspective, I'll leave legal to legal, but from a staff perspective, unless we've made an error in including the property and we shouldn't based on those tests, then I don't know that we will have any recommendation to change anything.
Because you will be using the ordinance as the basis to make your determinations.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Seekings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick question. Has anybody actually gone and done the math on what $480 compounded at 2% over the course of 30 years comes out to at the end of the 30 years? How much will each individual homeowner be paying at that point?
It's about, over that 30-year period, it's about, it's a little over $19,000 over that 30-year period. It's just over $19,000 per unit or per 1,800 square feet of new commercial space.
So
we did run that through an Excel spreadsheet. It's about a little over $19,000 impact over that 30-year time period.
So in year 30, do we know what the number will be?
Not right off the top of my head, sir.
Okay, but it's basically 20 grand per unit.
It's about a $20,000 impact over that period per unit.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Waring?
I don't know if is Amy on this meeting? Anyway, if she was on, I was going to ask.
She is not.
Amy is here.
Oh, she's in the building.
Miss Wharton is
Okay.
here.
Amy is
All right.
in the building.
I agree. Do we have any other city tax in the city of Charleston that has a automatic 2% increase annual?
You got a microphone.
Sorry. No, Councilmember Waring.
So this will be the first. Oh, this is the first.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Brady?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank my, first of all, constituents for coming out. And I promise my colleagues and I will take these objections under consideration, including those who were not able to be here, which some of it could be traffic, which ironically kind of underscores the need for the mid anyway. But we will take those under consideration and advisement. And I promise that we will give them due deliberation and consideration as we go forward with this. And I did just want to say, and I think Mr. Summerfield addressed this as well. One of the kind of peculiarities of the law is that the mid can't be used to address currently existing problems. They have to address kind of future need. So with the properties that have been included, to think that we've had a list of projects for development that has not yet occurred is kind of counterintuitive, I think, for most people. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not pretending to know all of that. But we wouldn't develop a list of projects for property to yet be developed because we don't know the impacts that are going to be created, because we can't solve project infrastructure needs that have already occurred. I mean, the law, as I understand it, was pretty clear about that. So that's why we want to create a Citizens Advisory Commission to have the input for what those impacts could be. But we're not going to unilaterally do that because we all represent citizens. Until we get redistricted, I represent about 26,000 of them. So we want to make sure that their voices are heard in this process, and it's not just a unilateral decision on what we think the needs might be, but what the future development impacts will actually occur and be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, our next council meeting is tomorrow night. We'll gather back at City Hall, I think 4:30 for Ways and Means and 5 o'clock for council. And then we have a workshop meeting next Tuesday, February 15th at 3 o'clock. If there's no other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Appreciate y'all coming out.